Welcome. Today we want to talk about a condition that we hear really frequently from students, audiences, graduates,
Yes.
and that is, I'm getting the first interview, but I'm not getting invited back for a second.
Yeah. And there can be a lot of sleepless nights
Mhm.
over this particular topic. So we thought we would highlight it here today for you.
So there are basically four reasons that you wouldn't be invited back, four general reasons you wouldn't be invited back. And the first one is fully in your control. Actually, they're all in your control. This one is quite easily in your control, and that is be prepared. If you're not prepared for your interview, that is the best reason I won't invite you back.
Yes, that you showed up late,
Mhm.
you didn't know the basics of the company, hadn't done any research. You want to make sure that you are showing up and you are showcasing yourself in the best possible light. And it can actually be a stress reducer if you've done your homework
For sure.
before. And that includes taking the drive if you have to physically be
If
there,
you're physically, it's some advice we always
or
give.
test drive the technology too. Yeah.
Make sure your Zoom lighting is good. Make sure that you have childcare or dog care or whatever it is.
Yes.
Any of those things that will throw you off your rhythm and distract me as the interviewer could be reasons that you're not being invited back.
Yeah. Another one in this too, Susan, that can show that you're unprepared is to ask questions that have already been answered, just like you're not listening.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's a really good one.
Yeah.
So unprepared. The second one is you don't have a clear answer to the why are you here question. So
Yes.
most interviewers typically at the early part of the interview will ask some version of what brought you here today or tell me about yourself. And if you don't have a really clear answer that ties your experience
Right.
to the job,
Role.
that explains your career break if you've taken one or this career pivot that you want to make, you're not going to be invited back because you've not made a compelling case.
Right.
Right.
And this next part of that that we really talk and dive into with our students and give them the confidence to speak clearly about this is that you're not explaining your break clearly, right? You're not explaining it well enough. Really interesting. We were just reading something. This woman was returning to work and she was saying how she was almost embarrassed about her career break and she was like not sure how to talk about it, and she would go on these interviews and it wasn't going really well. Well, there's a reason.
Exactly.
There's a reason behind that. Yeah.
If you don't explain it to me as an interviewer, I'm going to make up my own story, and it's never going to be as good as the story you're going to tell me. Which leads to the next reason that you might not be invited back. Just think of it mathematically. You might be applying with 999 other candidates. The fact that you actually made it to the 50 or so that are going to get interviewed is good. So that means you're decent. So it is true that if you get invited into that first interview and you don't get invited back, that you've done something.
Right.
And often it's that you just weren't memorable.
Yeah.
So I might be interviewing 50 people over the course of 4 days. If on Monday I'm sitting with the team and I've got my list of candidates and I say, oh, Susan Rietano, I don't remember her. Right? If you're not memorable, you're not going to be recommended for the next interview.
Yeah. So you really have to seize the moment and have engaging stories that you're weaving in to your explanations of who you are and why you are a fit for this company and when you're answering those questions.
One of the things that we recommend, we teach it in our courses, but we recommend it in all of our talks, is to write your stories ahead of time.
Yes, absolutely.
You probably have a handful of stories about your professional work where you've really shined. And those stories told slightly differently can answer different questions. So the same story that might answer, give me an example of when you've shown that you're calm under pressure, might also be the same answer to a question about leadership, which might also be a question or an answer to a question about change management. So having a few, we like saying 3 kind of stories under your belt when you go into an interview just makes you, first of all, the story will make you memorable, but preparing it ahead of time will take some of the heat off and you'll be better prepared and a little more calm.
Yes.
Yep.
And the last one is your favorite and something that we drill into anybody that comes across our path that's going on an interview. What's keeping you up during those sleepless nights is that you have not done the close properly. You have not closed the interview properly. So we've taught this on its own in a single video, but we'll give it more airtime right now.
Yeah, basically, at the end of every interview, you should know where you stand. You should know before you leave that interview if you're being invited back for the next one.
Right.
And you do that by using this 2-step close. We have a video just explaining it in more detail, but it's basically this. Kelley, thank you so much for your time today. Can you tell me what the next steps in the process are? That's step 1. You have to know what the next steps on the process are and don't assume that you do. And then Kelley will tell me what they are. And then I will say to Kelley, based on our conversation today, Kelley, do you feel comfortable recommending me for that, whatever the next step is?
Yeah.
And she's either going to say yes. Rarely will she say no.
Right.
And often she'll say, I think so, Susan, but I still have more candidates to interview, so I can't commit yet. In which case, you'll take that same question that we just demonstrated and flip it into the negative and say, I totally understand that, Kelley. But based on our conversation today, do you have any reservation or see any reason you wouldn't recommend me?
Right.
And then you're going to get that answer. And the thing is, if she tells me something that's specific, I can then work on it. I can ask her how important that skill set is, or I can tell her, gee, guess what? I do have that skill set, that missing piece. But at the very least, if she's really levels with me and says, Susan, you've done a great job today, but I have a feeling we're going to be choosing an internal candidate. So please don't feel badly if you don't get invited back.
And you're walking away with knowledge.
And you're walking away so you don't go, as you said, into that spiral of negativity, which often will happen.
Right. And I think the other thing that's really important about the close, much like what you're saying with the storytelling, writing it down, sometimes it's just writing that script out because the language and the way you position the language is really important. So there you have it, the 4 reasons you're not being invited for a second interview. If you liked what you heard today, you can like and subscribe to this YouTube channel. We put out new content every Monday. And if you want to learn more about us and our programming, you can visit us at www.preparetolaunchu.com. Thanks.